evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Mad Mouth. Just had a great show previous to this with longtime South Florida sports media colleague of mine, Jeff DeForest. Jeff DeForest is as good as it gets. And I've known this guy a long, long time, and a lot of folks that had watched that show will certainly use it as an educational tool for sure. So with that said, I want to go out there and introduce my crew. First and foremost, I'm at the top. Of course, he's always been at the top in a lot of ways with me. His name is Spencer. Tom said, Spencer is back.
I got to tell you, hearing that music actually right when it cues for the South Florida Tribune intros, that it gave me chills. It's like when you hear the Monday Night Football theme when you're about to get into a broadcast. But always appreciate you, Scott. Glad to be here. Consider it a privilege every second I'm on the show.
Very good. And I'll tell you what, before we get one, we're going to introduce everybody. Then you're going to give everybody a lesson of bulldoze marketing. Okay. JB Ellis is back.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
All right.
Another week. Here we go.
Yeah, we got it. We got a loaded broadcast tonight. The best part about it is I don't have another one afterwards. So we'll go whatever time we need to go. All right. And George Eichhorn. Okay. I know he was getting antsy to get on earlier, but he knows when you have a good interview out there that you go out there and you roll with it. And that's exactly what we've done. So
what's going on, everyone? Hope it's a great show, which I'm sure it will be.
All right. Well, okay, Spencer, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a lesson on bulldoze marketing and shoot out those stories?
Well, we told this a couple of times on the shows that Scott has been very gracious for me to come on. But let's tell you the Scott Morgenroth method, or bulldozer marketing, as it's called. First time I met Scott was 2021 in December for the National Sports Media Association Awards weekend, and Scott Morgenroth was the first person that I met through that. And he wasn't afraid to meet anyone, even if people are deep in conversation. And sometimes there are people who don't necessarily open up the circle to you. NSMA, they open it up to you. But even when people are deep in conversation, Scott purposefully positions himself in that circle. Sometimes waits for them to stop talking, or finds a lull in the conversation, or even joins into the conversation. And Scott will introduce himself to anybody, doesn't matter who they are. He'll say, here's my name, here's what I do. Would you subscribe to my YouTube channel? And then exchanges LinkedIn and email and phone numbers, add anything else on there. And through that, I was just telling the story before we went on the air. Scott was not, due to health issues, he couldn't go to Winston-Salem this past summer for the NSMA banquet. And I had several students with me from the University of Alabama chapter of the NSMA. And I knew with Scott not being there, all right, I have to be the bulldozer. I have to be the one that goes through. And we were at the Legacy Night, and Lisa Salters had won Sideline Reporter of the Year for the NSMA. And we didn't know this until afterwards, but she was going to leave immediately after the ceremony because she had a flight to catch to get back to where she lives. And so we did what Scott has been successful at, which is strategic positioning. We got there maybe about 20, 30 minutes before people were supposed to start checking in at the dinner. And we positioned ourselves near the entrance where people would check in. And through that, Lisa Salters, Ian Eagle, other colleagues were walking in through there. But Lisa comes up, shake her hand, introduce myself, introduce to the rest of the people around us. We talked a little bit about Monday Night Football and asked, hey, can we get a photo with you? And she graciously agreed. We did. And then we're sitting down at the front. We noticed she gets her award. The other awardees for Legacy Night got their awards. And right about when they were going to dismiss, Lisa's walking out with her son because she's got that flight to catch back. So if Scott Morgenroth had not taught me bulldozer marketing and had not taught me to introduce myself to other people without having any sort of fear for what's going to happen, then I wouldn't have got a photo with Lisa Salters, wouldn't have been able to meet her. So, Scott, looking forward to running it back this year, this time in Greensboro at the Grand Over Resort. Should be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to returning to the event. It's an event that I really enjoy networking. JBL plans to be there, and I think JBL is going to find out that I know he's done a lot of stuff with the Super Bowl and other big events, but when JB Ellis has an opportunity to meet his colleagues, and I think this will be an experience that JB Ellis will never forget. Don't be wrong, JB, your work at the Super Bowl was nothing short of outstanding. It was. I paid attention to what you were doing, but this is a different animal compared to what you're doing. And, of course, we're working our tails off to try to get the NFL draft. So, JB, we're in a position to help maybe get sideline sports, another opportunity to meet more and more people to go with your growing lineup of excellent shows. And this opportunity in the next few months or so will be that type of opportunity. With that said, let me go over the top. Now that we brought Spencer on here, let's talk about George Eichhorn. Glad to have you on, George.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here, man. It's a great show and a great lineup tonight. I know it always is, so it's good to be on.
And last but not least, Mr. Ellis himself.
Yes, it's going to be a good night. I mean, I'm excited. And we'll got a lot to talk about. I see the name of the show. I think we're going to talk about your prediction, how it came true.
You think we're going to talk about our prediction, Mr. Ellis?
So.
Would you like to rephrase the word "think"? Otherwise, I'm going to hit you with a Jacob Christner. Are you crazy? I've been waiting to do that all night, anyways.
I think that's what we're going to do. That's my guess.
No, I know that's what we're going to do, and because you said the word "think," you're going to lead off with this. All right, I'm not into the "I told you so's," but tonight I am in the "I told you so's." Okay, Dusty May is a Michigan man. I called it last Wednesday's show, and lo and behold, Ward Manuel don't have to get fired because you got it right. I think the president, Santa Ono, I believe that's the name of this guy, George. Okay, they both went ahead and identified Dusty May right away, and why not? All he did was lead FAU to a Final Four, and what I call an Al Michaels moment. Do you believe in miracles? Well, he nearly did. And while Dusty signed a 10-year contract, I knew he wasn't going to live out that deal. Got $1 million to hang around, and now he's going to get $3.75 million over 5 years to lead the Wolverines, and that'll turn into an extension at some point, anyways, down the road. I definitely do believe, yes, I did predict it on this show last week that if Ward Manuel did hire him, he should be fired. But Ward Manuel, I'll spare you the criticism. You got this hire right, is what you did. So I'm just glad as heck that I was able to make it last week. But but it is a lesson, though. I should let everybody know. You have to follow your instincts when you go out there and make predictions. You don't make them with the sake that you're looking to get clicks or constitute fake news. You don't do that. You have to be closer to the situation. And if you feel something fits, you do. And that's the only reason I got that one right last week is because I knew, number one, a Michigan job was too good to pass up. They're talking about arguably the biggest school in the country, which has a tradition that lasts over 100 years. Their football situation's unreal, all-time winningest program in Division I, now new recent national champions. Basketball program is pretty good, but we all know football is king there. And Dusty May is leaving from a 3,000-seat gym to a 13,000-seat, to me, place that he calls the house that Cassie built. So, all right, with that said, I'm done with what I had to say. Jesse Stuber, welcome. And you know what, Joe? He's going to be your Cubs guy in a moment. So here we go. Jesse's in the chat room, and I'm sure the rest of the Burstein guys will fall into place. Thank you very much. All right, JB Ellis, give me your thoughts about the Dusty May hire.
I said it last week. It was a good move for him. He's a great coach. The program needs a new direction. They got somebody that will be able to lead them. Good for him, making the money, getting a better job at a bigger university. That's what it's about. You coach at a smaller school. It stinks for the smaller schools that, they get used as you go up the ladder by the athletes and the coaches. But, it says a lot about them that they can develop these guys. And that's how they'll get the next person, the next Dusty May, is by keeping producing. So, it's good for everybody in the sports world. And congratulations to him. Great move by Michigan. It's only going to get better for him as long as he keeps doing what he does.
If you want to learn about Dusty May, all you need to do is go to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. I had the opportunity to ask him many questions over the course of several press conferences. You won't find a better guy. He's 47 years of age. So if the Wolverines are looking for longevity, they're going to find it with Dusty May. Again, he's young. His players usually spend 2, 3, 4 years there anyhow. I don't see any reason to think that once they get the NIL thing worked out, that Dusty May won't be able to retain his players. He'll use the transfer portal a lot more. He'll be able to use the NIL money. So again, 47, bright future, and now he got a job that most people would covet for sure. All right, George Eichhorn, you're close to the situation. What is the area saying in terms of the Dusty May hire?
Yeah, most people are pretty pleased with it right now, Scott. I mean, the positive press, I think, came out of the press conference. I wasn't there at the press conference, but things were really happening very fast. Obviously, he's got a connection here way back in the day, 2005, 2006. He was at Eastern Michigan University. And if some of your listeners and viewers don't know, Eastern Michigan is in Ypsilanti, just a few miles away from Ann Arbor. In fact, I think Dusty said that they lived in Ann Arbor when he was coaching at Eastern Michigan. But that's all in the past. We know since then he went to Murray State and Louisiana Tech and, UAB. He's just had a great series of stops, I think. And what he's done at FAU, Scott, I mean, you've been tooting his horn for a long time as you're close to that program down there and that magical run, that FAU had, to the 2023 Final Four, which nobody expected. I think that he's a great choice. I applaud. I really do. I applaud, President Ono and Mord Manuel, the athletic director, for getting it done so quickly. I mean, when you think about it, they wrapped things up so quickly after FAU was eliminated and didn't even really have too much time to breathe. But things came together quickly. I'm sure there was some negotiating going on with the salary and stuff like that. But he's going to be a very positive influence, I think, on the campus and in that locker room. And it's just been, unfortunately, with Juwan Howard, it just was going nowhere the last couple of years. So I think it's a good move. And again, as I told you privately, Scott, congratulations, because you picked this one right off the bat.
Thank you, George. All right, Jesse Stuber, how about Dusty Register? And he's an old buddy of mine from a long time ago. Good to know. Glad he has some familiarity there. Jesse Stuber and JB Ellis are about to become buddies in due time because of the Cubs connection. With that said, we'll turn over to Spencer.
How fitting is it that the Motor City Madmouth made a correct prediction for the Dusty May to head closer and closer to the Motor City? I mean, it's just a storyline waiting to happen. So fortunately, in my position, I got my bachelor's and master's at Middle Tennessee State University. So seeing I know Florida Atlantic was out the door with Conference USA before they had their magical run in last year's Final Four. But to still see Conference USA has got some decent basketball. And to show my true blue colors, the only team to beat Florida Atlantic during that year, one of the few teams, Middle Tennessee State in the regular season. So I'll just brag about that. One of our colleagues, Tracy Wolfson, actually expressed that she spent a lot of time watching and working with Dusty May during his run to the Final Four and during their loss in Brooklyn. And she mentioned she's excited to welcome him to the University of Michigan as well. And you mentioned it, George, of how he coached at East Michigan and has his son in AA as well. So it definitely was the right move. And I like what you said, George, about how things move so quickly in those kind of situations. I mean, I know you guys have talked extensively about Coach Saban retiring and then Kalen DeBoer getting hired by the University of Alabama. Only in college sports can it really happen that quickly. Because even in the NFL, when was the last time we saw a coach getting hired within the span of maybe 48 hours or even that? It's such a long process to get to that point at the professional level. But in college, you have a lot more of that flexibility to be able to move so quickly. And you're absolutely right, Scott, in how why would he not apply for that job? Why would he not potentially take advantage of it if he had the opportunity to? Because sure, the goal is always to bring a national championship to the program you're working with. And sure, you want to try and do the best for your team, but it's very parallel in the case of Kalen DeBoer in a sense where, yes, were they going to bring a national championship back to their respective programs? Probably, if they got the right guys and things were on the right kind of circumstance. But where's the better place that they have the opportunity to do that over other programs with the amount of money and resources and recruitment methods, especially with NIL being the wild, wild west nowadays. And for Kalen DeBoer, is the University of Alabama. For Dusty May is clearly the University of Michigan. So it's pretty special to see this kind of come to fruition. But it's always good when even if you don't necessarily have insider info, it's good when you get to make these predictions and you actually turn out right. So I don't have a cap on like Scott does, but I tip my cap to the Motor City Madmouth and getting it right.
Thank you so much, Spencer. It means a lot hearing it from everybody, but especially you. Now, I will say this about Dusty May, though. Last year, not the one that we just finished the year before, Conference USA, but the thing is he went ahead and oversaw the switch to the American Athletic Conference, and by doing that, his team was able to finish second in the AAC and got the bid because, number one, they had an incredible strength of schedule that involved beating the University of Arizona. So when you talk about what he did there, and with a lot of his players coming back, I made a prediction last week. I thought that they'd beat Connecticut. Well, I don't mind eating humble pie. I was wrong about that, but it's not the worst prediction I've ever made. But a better one was later when he ended up getting hired at Michigan. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to miss seeing him at FAU, but I also understand that I know he made the right move going to a place like Michigan. But this is an easy hire. Michigan identified that they wanted him right away, and they moved swiftly to get it done. And, again, Ward Manuel, from what I hear, John Beeline was a part of this process.
Yes.
So he was a part of it. And then, to me, they just came down to his place in Fort Lauderdale. They met up with him. And when a guy like him feels wanted, let alone at an institution of that size, it came together fairly quickly. And I know that the Wolverines will be fine. Juwan Howard.
I think so. And Scott, I'm glad you brought that up about Beeline because yes, he played a big role in recruiting and convincing Dusty to come. And hats off to Beeline. Of course, he's kind of like a free agent right now. He's not with the Pistons anymore. He's not with the Cavaliers anymore. But boy, John is a great basketball mind. And you're right, Scott. Ward leaned on him to talk to him.
Yeah, well, the reality is that Juwan Howard oversaw the worst team in Michigan history, losing as many games they did. There was no way that he's going to retain that job. I mean, that's all there was to it. You hate to see a guy like Phil Martelli leave because he had a lot of experience. But, Juwan Howard had a certain shelf life. He's no longer there. Dusty May's going to have a long shelf life with the Michigan Wolverines. Just simply well. I mean, I know the way the guy operates.
Yeah.
I mean, great with the media, but more importantly, he'll do research on that university. He'll dissect everything he needs. And once upon a time, he took that FAU job thinking, oh, God, did I make the biggest mistake of my life? He stuck it out and turned it into a winner. Never had a losing season at FAU. So Michigan knew what they were getting. If you could take a program like FAU to the Final Four, please tell me, folks, if that doesn't catch your attention, I don't know what will. I mean, think about it. The ultimate David and Goliath, and they should have been against Connecticut last year, but San Diego State got the best of them. All right, well, any closing thoughts from any of you about Dusty May headed to Michigan? I'll leave it wide open for this.
I guess the only thing I will say is that if you haven't already listened to the interviews that Scott has done here on the South Florida Tribune with Dusty May, take a listen to him. It's Scott certainly knows how to ask the right questions that come out. He knows how to interview pretty well. But when you listen to the conversations that Dusty has, you really get an insight into the type of coach he is, the type of father he is, the man he is. And maybe you could have dissected some stuff there and thought, well, why is he at FAU? He could be at some other big university. So you might pick that up in some of the conversations that Scott was able to have.
Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate that. All right, well, let's go on to the National Football League. Okay, and I'll tell you, I guess it's only fitting that Spencer's on this show anyway, because he's the guy that would, I try to build the shows around the people I put on here. So let's talk about the NFL, and that's definitely glad he's on this one, as well as any other one he wants to come on. But the NFL announces 2 exclusive streaming games for the 2024 season, including one postseason game. Peacock, NBC, Universal will exclusively stream the Week 1 game in Sao Paulo, Brazil on Friday, September 6th. This contest is the NFL's first ever regular season game in South America. And it will also mark the first Friday night game on opening weekend in over 50 years. The Philadelphia Eagles are the designated team. Now, Prime Video, already home to Thursday Night Football, will stream a wild card game this season. It will be the second time a playoff game has been available exclusively via a streaming service. We all know that after last season's wild card game between the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs on Peacock, where a lot of those local markets were able to watch it for free, where everybody else had to go with it. So, Spencer, you know what? I'm going to lead off with you on this one. Obviously, we know how much you're involved with NSMA, but obviously you're teaching broadcasting and media over at the University of Alabama. What's your take on this?
So I think a lot less people are going to be frustrated with Prime being the exclusive home of a playoff game as compared to Peacock, because it pretty much, you walk around with most people on the street, and a whole lot of people there are more people, I would argue, that have subscriptions to Amazon Prime and have Prime Video included with that than those who have subscriptions to Peacock separately. I think the NFL is doing the right thing in testing the waters. As much as I actually, a couple of weeks ago in my class, I asked the class, all right, show of hands, how many of you were frustrated that Peacock was the exclusive streaming home of an NFL wildcard game? About half the class had their hands raised. And I said, all right, how many of you canceled your subscription after the playoff game was over? A couple of them had their hands up, some of them, but the NFL and NBC made the right decision on that, because Peacock retained about 33% of its subscribers after that playoff game, solely from those who subscribed, which you could say, well, that's still like 60-something% of people who didn't sign up. Guess what? 33% of, say, this, even the base subscription of $5, that's a lot of money. That's a decent amount of money to keep people on your streaming service in that regard. And I think I appreciate and feel it was needed for Roger Goodell to say at his Super Bowl press conference that in my lifetime, we will not see a Super Bowl exclusively on a streaming platform, because that gives people a much needed, glad we're not having to deal with that at this point. But I think people are still going to watch it. Like, as much as people will complain about streaming services and how it's cable with extra steps and it's too much money on these things. For those who don't know, the United States actually has a rule that was enacted back in the 70s, or a media law, that if any NFL team that is playing, you have to syndicate it on an over-the-air local affiliate for the teams that are playing. So I know the opponent hasn't been announced for the Philadelphia Eagles hosting that game in Sao Paulo. But in Philadelphia, or in the markets that get the Philadelphia Eagles, it will be on a local television affiliate, whether it's NBC, CBS, Fox, or ABC. So you'll find some way to watch it. And the other thing people don't realize is that you don't have to subscribe. You can go to your local sports bar, because even if it's on a streaming service like Prime Video, for example, with the playoff game, DirecTV has the rights to distribute the game commercially. So you could go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and as far as I'm aware, they're not going to charge you a cover going to these bars, because it's included with their cable business subscriptions. Or as far as I've heard, it's only with like UFC and WWE pay-per-view events. That's the only thing you have to worry about. So it's that. So anyone who has this notion of, well, I'm not going to be able to watch the game, it's like, no, you could just go out in public or go to some commercial business that'll have it available to them. But I think it's good. I think it's a good thing with going on the streaming side of things, not just for the changing media landscape, with how, I think it was 2022, Nielsen released that finally there are more people watching on streaming services than there are cable, or traditional cable markets. So we're at that point as a society now where the traditional cable package is dead, and we're in the streaming kind of era in this sort of regard. So I think it's a good thing, and especially with the playoff game for Peacock getting about, I think it was 33 million viewers, which is still pretty good for wildcard playoff games. So I think it's a good thing. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out this fall.
Okay. All right, Jesse Stuber. All right, JB, pay attention to this and you can answer the question. I'm a Chicago Cubs guy. My advice to you, Mr. Ellis, take the guy's first name, his last name, write it down, find him on Facebook, and you have yourself somebody for Confidential. So you have it right in front of you, Joe. Go ahead. He's somebody that can definitely help you out. Jesse Stuber, you see a lot of Jesse on a lot of our shows. With that said, JB, go ahead. Let's get your take on the NFL's most recent move to go with these two streaming games.
Listen, it's the way that the games are going. This is the new toy. The streaming services are trying to bring in money, and to bring in money, you need the best thing to put on there, which is the NFL. Everybody wants to watch NFL football. It's the highest rated sports in America. So in order to get the subscribers, you have to have the best programming. And the best programming is the NFL, the best live programming. So for the streaming services, it makes sense. They're going to pay the NFL a boatload. They're going to get a boatload of subscribers. And for the casual fan, the odds are most people have this service already. Spencer made it perfectly clear what the rule and the law is as far as if you're in the local market, you don't miss out on the game, which is really all that matters. If you live in New York and you want to watch the Philly game, yeah, you can get the streaming service. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you live in Philly, I can understand. Maybe you can't afford the $8. I respect that. I don't talk about other people's money, but they at least have that right to watch the game, and they'll get to watch it over the air. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're out of market, it's like any other sport. You can't watch games when you're out of market. I can't just go turn on, the Yankee game living in Chicago. I have to buy a subscription to something or get some sort of service. It's the same thing, and there's nothing wrong with it. The NFL's just, doing what they're going to do to make money and survive. And this is how, you can pay ridiculous salaries to a guy named Daniel Jones for $40 million. So got to have a reason to get that money. It's not going to grow on trees, but we're just burning it. Yeah.
Great point about Daniel.
The owners of the Giants, they could have went a couple of miles down the road, Atlantic City, that red or black, and they could have kept Saquon or lost Daniel Jones. Either way, it would have been, good or the same, because Daniel Jones really isn't a quarterback. Scott, you can go out there and play and be just as good.
Well, thanks a lot, Joe. I'm glad we got a Daniel Jones reference in there. I'd like to think, even though my knees are busted up like everything else is busted up, I could get out there and play once upon a time, but I appreciate the confidence Mr. Ellis has in me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, with all my gimpy knees and all that business, I'd like to think I could play, but you ever heard that thing, Joe, called Father Time?
It's all right. The rules are in your favor now. If you're a quarterback, you can't be touched. Don't worry, you'll be fine.
I'll tell you what, you're going to be my agent the next time I go out there and sign up for one of these days. All right, Mr. Ellis. Not that you're already on speed dial. I can't, unless the technology conquers up something else. Okay, you're on speed dial, but now Joe Ellis has been hired as my agent. Okay, so get it done. Hey, listen, let me tell you what. Who's that hefty lefty quarterback many years ago? Was that? Oh gosh, help me out.
The guy that passed away, right?
Yeah, right. Is it Jared Lorenzen? I think it's his name.
I believe so. Hey,
if you can play quarterback, maybe I should come out of retirement. Of course, I don't think you're going to get the misses to buy into that. But good luck thinking that'll ever happen.
DeVito was quarterback for how long? You'll be fine.
Who?
DeVito. You'll be first string in no time. I am known as a Giant fan. I anoint you starting quarterback. We don't even need to talk to anybody. We just drive up to East Rutherford. We put you on the field. We're good.
Okay. Well, don't worry. We'll make that happen. We'll make that happen. Hey, by the way, in the next 4 months, I am negotiating to try to get a van for us here. So we'll go from there. But I'll get up there. Hey, listen, you and I got to do some stuff up in Metro New York anyways, as the alliance between the Sideline Sports and South Florida Tribune continues to grow a lot more. We'll turn it over to Icor, and then Candy's going to give us a station break. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys have pretty much said everything that needs to be said. I mean, obviously, the changing times are changing very, very fast. Doesn't surprise me at all that they designated these 2 days, these two games. The only problem I have, the first time you've gone to the South America, I would have preferred to have been on network television because that's the first time ever. But I understand this; it's a big business, and like you guys said, they're there to pave the way for the future, and especially the young people nowadays are all into streaming. So it doesn't surprise me. I really think that the NFL is going in that direction, but it's taking baby steps. It didn't say we're doing half the game streaming. No, it's nothing like that yet. But they're taking baby steps, and there's natural progression after they did the Miami KC game in the playoffs. So I think it's a good thing. Things will work out, and as long as they can protect the home market, the home city of the franchise that's hosting the game, for example, the two markets, that they can still put it over the air. That does make a big difference in my mind to help those people that some still do not have either internet or they don't have streaming capabilities. So that's about all I got to add. But no, it's an interesting topic.
Okay. All right. We're going to turn over to Candy.
George, I have to say that I agree with you, though, for the first time you're going into a South American country, that it would be nice for that to be shown for everybody to see. You
Yep.
know, seeing the sites, because they always do like show the sites, they show different fans, see what teams they're sporting. I
Yep.
agree. For that one, I agree that, and I agree that streaming is the wave of the future. But the issue is you're not streaming to just one platform. You're streaming on a bunch of different. You're streaming on Amazon Prime and Peacock, and they're different ones. So now, how many streaming services do you need to subscribe to because of that?
Yeah.
So I just have 2 cents. But Spencer, I know you want to say something too.
Yeah, one thing on that, I think Major League Soccer has paved the way for what future sporting leagues are going to look like. I thought with the launch of NFL Plus that the NFL was going to start going to that point, which they are, because if you're subscribed to NFL Plus, at least on your tablet or smartphone, you can watch pretty much every game local in market. YouTube TV's Sunday Ticket, you're able to watch stuff out of market on any device at this point. The challenge is it all comes down to money. You could bet that probably in the negotiation tables with the contracts that were stipulated in the last media agreement for the NFL with their four or five respective partners, you could bet that when they said, hey, I think we want to give Prime the playoff game this year, NBC is saying, well, what do we get exclusive? And imagine, I think it's better that they chose this game for Peacock exclusive instead of Thanksgiving night, because but I think it's also interesting to think about. Paramount Plus hasn't gotten signed to that yet, so I wonder, because they are dual casting CBS games, so I wonder when CBS Viacom will push on that. But one thing I realized that's going to be lost in this is the final year of Al Michaels' contract with Amazon Prime Video. So he's going to be calling a playoff game again. And for those who've looked at social media, and I don't bash my colleagues, but social media has said that they do not like the energy that Al brings to Thursday Night Football. So I wonder how that's going to play out to have Michaels back in the playoffs again, especially because people were very critical of his performance with Tony Dungy a couple of years ago with that miracle comeback that the Jaguars had against the Chargers. So it's interesting times in the National Football League.
Which, by the way, Spencer, Candy and I did cover that game, the Chargers and the
nice.
Jaguars. All right, Candy, take it away.
Okay, if you have not heard yet, Scott wrote this book, Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. He's our host. He talks about how the media has changed over the course of his 40 plus years in the business. You have to buy the book. You got to see, there's a picture of him and Muhammad Ali when he was young. And yes, I mean young. And there's all kinds of other great quotes and stories about some of the different people that he has interviewed over the years. You got to get your book. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, or Barnes and Noble. If you like to listen to podcasts, listen to us. Monday nights, we have a baseball show. Tuesday nights, we have a football show. Wednesday nights is this night. Sports Exchange, where you can hear any sport topic. It could be cornhole. It could be basketball. It could be football. You just never know. You got to tune in to find out. Scott also does interviews on Motor City Mad Mouse Show. Thursday nights is normally Pundit's Pundit and Fire Up, where we have a special segment called My Town, which we go into each person's town and talk about something different that's happening in that town. If you have ideas for our shows, email us, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Hit up our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You can find Scott's writing, George's writing, all kinds of transcripts from the Dolphins, the Jags, the Lions. We have FAU sports there. You can go check. Scott was at Miami Hurricanes Pro Day, and he's got interview with Xavier Restrepo, who's a up-and-coming wide receiver. You're going to probably see him in the NFL next year. But catch out some of those interviews. If you see a little red subscribe button, that means you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, and I'm going to ask you why haven't you? Hit it, share us, like us. And then the other thing is also support all of the people that support us. So Sideline Sports, JB Ellis is part of that. Go subscribe to their channel and watch their shows. Read Scott. George also wrote a book. Go get his book. Spencer's out there. You subscribe, follow their shows, and follow them. If you want to advertise or sponsor our show, 954-304-4941. Call Scott. Back to you, Scott.
I should point out Candy Ebling did a masterful job putting Sideline Sports website together. You talk about a masterful job. She did exactly that. And a little footnote on the Xavier Restrepo interview, that's gotten over 2,000 views on YouTube. So, 3.5-minute interview got an awful lot of eyeballs out there. And those numbers don't lie. I went there to get in there. Sometimes it's social media and all this stuff ceases to amaze me. I'm still trying to figure it out. My man Jeff DeForest was doing it too. So 2 guys, but we're embracing it. It just takes us old guys a little bit longer to do it. I classify him as one of those. Jeff DeForest and I, we're just tying our head. We remember what South Florida was once upon a time when you only had 3 teams, the Strikers, the Hurricanes, and the Dolphins. Now look what you got. Never mind, we'll go with the game. All right, well, I guess we'll probably do it with the right guy in the show tonight with George Eichhorn, because I can't give him a hard time about mentioning Michigan topics because I have a couple, but they happen to be good ones. We're going to talk about Jack Golke went crazy in the 80-76 upset win over Kentucky. Has 32 points. 10 of them were 3-pointers, and he had a rebound. And when you compare the coaches of those 2 schools, Greg Campy makes $330,000. Not bad amount of money if you can get it. Or John Calipari getting $8.5 million for Kentucky. Now, when you talk about the powerful nature of social media, get this. Golke had 500 followers, unverified Thursday, and then to beat Kentucky after that 3-point barrage on Friday at 20,600 verified subscribers. You talk about the power of success, social media explosion. That was it. All right, JB. I gave you a lot to think about between the coaches' salaries and social media, but this Jack Golke definitely put Oakland on the map. Take it from there.
First of all, that's what March Madness is. Guys like Golke doing crazy things that they wouldn't do normally, stepping up, seeing a team like Oakland, not in California, in Michigan, showing up and beating Kentucky, who has been awful the last 5 tournaments, if I'm correct. And, Calipari, why he still has a job, I don't know. He's not doing a very good job getting his team to advance in the tournament. He has the advantage of getting top-ranked talent every year, but they can't seem to win in the tournament. And if you lose into Oakland, which is great, it's a great story because this year has been a very chalky tournament. Hasn't been too many upsets. So the Oakland story was great. NC State's another great story. But, yeah, you compare the difference in salary, you compare the difference in money that the schools have, the basketball programs. This is a phenomenal thing to see a team like Oakland win it. When you see a guy like Golke go crazy with 10 threes, that's phenomenal. And it's, it's an experience he'll never forget because he's not going to play in the NBA. This is his big moment where the guys at Kentucky, they're going to play in the NBA. They're going to have bigger moments. This was his night, and that's why we watched the tournament.
Joe, I'll give you 33 million reasons why Calipari kept his job, okay? You know what that is? $33 million, and that's what his buyout is this year. So next year,
Kentucky, they got plenty. It's not a money thing. We're not talking about Seton Hall. Kentucky's got enough money in their program they don't want to pay the money, but they have it.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right, Spencer, what do you think about Mr. Golke?
I think JB kind of addressed it on the money side of things, where his contract requires he has to be owed 75% of it, which translates to $33 million. They probably have the money on standby, but they don't want to pay it because they want to put it into other things in that circumstance. But anytime somebody gets upset, talks about March Madness or any type of upsets or whatever, I just tell them, well, if you look at the following sample here and cue the March Madness theme from CBS Turner, because JB, you clarified it perfectly. It's March Madness. These types of upsets happen all the time. Now, I have a friend of mine who is a devout Kentucky fan, football, basketball, any of those sports, you name it. And he has been of the opinion, and this is his, that I think I could kind of see. His opinion is that, well, we have these great players with Kentucky, right, that are bound to go to the NBA, at least several of them. They'll go to the NBA. They realize they're about to get contracts or they're going to be signed. So what reason do they have to put their bodies on the line in March Madness and go fully through it and risk getting injured and not getting those contracts? So his opinion has always been, well, what's the point of us trying in March Madness? We're going to get paid millions of dollars to put our bodies on the line. Why do we do this in Kentucky? And NIL has kind of helped alleviate that in some circumstances, but not a whole lot. I was talking to my sports announcing class about this too. It hasn't happened. I think this is maybe the 7th or 8th time in March Madness history on the men's bracket where the number 1 and number 2 seeds for every region have made it to the Sweet 16. Now, it's happened recently, I think in 21 maybe, or 2019. It happened at least in more recent years, but before that, it hadn't happened since the 80s. So this is a very abnormal bracket that we're seeing. Yeah, sure, there's not as many upsets that we're seeing. I mean, Oregon busted everybody's bracket, and Kentucky getting upset busted a lot of brackets, but this is where we're seeing some of the greatest basketball that's happening. Will we see the number 1 seeds go to the Final Four? I don't know. It seems to me like there's got to be at least one upset, Purdue, but there's got to be at least one upset that's snuck in there in some regards. But I just, I love March Madness. I love basketball. And shout out to our colleague, Andrew Catalon, who's going to call his first Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matches with Jim Nance retiring, Andrew Catalon and Steve Lappas getting promoted to that kind of 4th crew for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. So that part is special as well. But I love watching March Madness, both the men's and women's side. I know we're talking about the men's in this point, but they always just produce such great content.
Well, it's amazing how you bring up Lapis and Catalan because they were at the FAU Memphis game, which, by the way, I was at over at the they call it the Ellie Center now, Eleanor Baldwin, but I always say FAU Arena because I haven't quite figured it out. Candy Ebling, by the way, mentions Gold Marquette. Yeah, they're the number 2 seed for sure. So that validates. Yeah, she's Wisconsin girl. Got to get those. What's that? 3
Big East teams we play after this weekend.
Yeah, they've had a good run. Why St. John's never got in is anybody's guess, but I don't know.
Money.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Their deals with Fox, CBS has the ACC and things like that. I think that had a lot to do with it. Looking at it afterwards, yeah, I do, because the Big East, they haven't gotten the teams like they usually get the last couple of years. Their deals with Fox. Fox isn't with the tournament. CBS has the SEC. And a lot of the other conferences. And when you look at the teams that are getting in, that could play a part in it.
Intriguing. Never heard of it before, but I can see where you're coming from. All right, George.
Well, Greg Campy, hats off to Coach Campy. I mean, he's well known, obviously, where I live in the state of Michigan. 40 years, this man has been living and breathing college basketball for 40 seasons. And I'm telling you, they've only made the NCAA tournament a handful of times, but this one really, really put Oakland University on the map. Yeah. It's a very, very disappointing Kentucky team this year, but I give all the credit where it's due. Jack Leike, he's not even the leading scorer. He's the second leading scorer in the regular season for the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. But this is a kid that came from Hillsdale College. And, Scott and I remember this because they were in the same league as Wayne State University, the GLIAC. It's called the GLIAC. And this is an amazing story. He came over for one season only to Oakland and did a masterful job as a ball player. Uh, and it's funny when CBS, I don't know if you caught it, but the pregame show last Saturday, just after 12 noon or maybe a little before, but anyways, they interviewed Jack next to Greg, and Greg says, well, yeah, this kid next to me here, he won't go in the NBA. He'll be selling insurance next year. And everybody laughed. The whole studio. It was a great line by Campy. And it just goes to show you that, yeah, I mean, we're not lining up to go into the NBA. Any of these players, mostly from the Horizon League, which is where they come from. But yeah, they won the regular season. They had a great year, Oakland. They won the tournament, so they got the automatic bid, and it was wonderful. I mean, they've done a great job. And like I said, hats off to Campy. He's just a baller. I mean, when it comes to coaching these guys, he just loves it, and he loves golfing too, but he had to delay his golfing a little bit by advancing his team into the what is it, round of 32? Yeah. Anyways, it is still a great story, and it's done a lot for his program, and hats off to him. It was great watching that game, and great for that kid to get 10 3-pointers. Unbelievable.
All right. Well, you know what, George? We're going to segue to the final topic of the night, and we're going to start off with you. And I'll tell you why we're going to start off with you, George, because what Oakland spent on men's basketball in 2023, we're going to compare and contrast Oakland and Kentucky. The Oakland Golden Grizzlies spent $2.3 million this year versus Kentucky, $23.6 million. All right, George, what's your take on that? I mean, that's a bit of a difference there, isn't it? I never took math in college.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, JB says, I mean, they got so many deep pockets there in Kentucky. I mean, that's a blue ribbon, blue bread, whatever school. And they're one that has to be in the Final Four every single season, despite the nonsense of Calipari not getting them there. That's their goal, obviously, every year. Yeah. The Oakland University, if people don't know, it's a very well-to-do suburb here in Metro Detroit. It's a city called Rochester. Actually, part of the campus is in Rochester, and part of it's in Auburn Hills, which you may remember was the home of the Detroit Pistons when they played at a place called the Palace. So anyways, you got this school that really they really specialize in what I call professionals, white collar professional, that type of education, undergraduate, master degrees. But these guys these kids are pretty darn smart. So they don't have a football team. It is their bread and butter is the men's basketball team. They have other sports as well, but Oakland University, yeah, that really shocked me when I heard that, Scott. But there's obviously no comparison to how much money is spent in Kentucky. But I tell you what, they certainly made the most of their money at Oakland. I mean, they have. I mean, when they got this far, and they also have a situation where they've got a really unique gym that arena, it's called. If you guys haven't seen it, it's like a gold floor, very unusual color for a hard court, and it's a goldish. Their colors are gold and black, the team colors. But yeah, it is a remarkable statistic. I'm glad you brought it up, but I don't think that the smaller schools may never catch up. But boy, when they get their shining moment, they took advantage of it.
All right, let me give you a little bit of information about Oakland University. First of all, Blake Lozinski, glad you made it. What's going on? We're talking college basketball, NFL, and Dusty May. So that's what we've talked about so far. First of all, I actually contemplated getting a master's degree at Oakland University. And I remember back in the days when I went to the University of South Florida, all we had was the basketball program, not the football program. And our homecoming was over at the basketball games. I'm sure that the same thing holds true for Oakland University. Their homecoming is probably the basketball games, as they should. But it's a great academic institution. I could kick the tires about getting a master's degree, but when I kept talking to some of my colleagues in Metro Detroit, they said, yeah, you don't really need a master's degree in mass communications to go deeper into the business. But I did kick the tires on it, and I was thinking about heavily going. So it's a great school. I'm glad they had a little bit of a run there. NC State was way too much for them. But fact of the matter is, and besides, you never know. Jack Goldkey could be a second-round pick for anybody, it's a low risk pick anyway. You might find yourself another 3-point specialist out there. I've seen crazier things happen in the NBA draft, a draft which you get a dearth of European players for sure. So, with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Spencer.
It's especially when it comes down to money, essentially with Kentucky spending 10 times that amount. It certainly the obvious answer is that the SEC just means more. I mean, you could define that by athletic competition and money spent and campus prestige and all of that. But I like what George pointed out. In some of these arenas, you would not know about them until they get their one shining moments. Like you wouldn't even think about a kind of goldish tint on a court or anything along those lines. But I think that's the beauty of March Madness. The college football playoff doesn't really have that because it's now, I mean, we'll see how it plays out with the 12-team playoff and the expansion of the conference champions and things like that. But it's still not, not as, not as large. And I would argue not necessarily as equitable as the NCAA tournament goes, because at least with March Madness, you have teams that even if your season was terrible, you are the last seed in your conference tournament. If you go on a run and win the conference championship, you're automatically into the NCAA tournament. With college football, even Alabama, with becoming the number 4 seed by still a miracle in my mind, them becoming the number 4 seed, they lost one game against Texas, one game, and they were on the verge of not having a chance at a national championship.
Right.
But with basketball, and I know that there's the differing arguments about how basketball and football are different animals, and that's a whole nother debate for another day. But even you go lower in college football with Division II and Division III, they have a larger bracket to be able to, and it goes deeper into January for all the teams being able to play. But with basketball, it's very much a lot more equitable in my mind, where you're able to see these teams have their one shining moments or go on their runs. I mean, we talk about FAU. Think about St. Peter's a couple of years ago when they had that magical run going all the way to the Final Four. It's now I don't know how long it's been since we've had a first 4 team make a deep run into the postseason. To my knowledge, I don't think a first 4 team has ever won the national championship. But imagine being able to have that chance in football, and how many players would not opt out of the bowl games, would continually bust their chops to be able to get to that point and have that chance. So I think it's, sure, money's way different in that regard, but all that matters is that Oakland got the W and Kentucky got the L.
All right, well, I also want to mention something about Oakland University. At one point, they were considering buying the Palace of Auburn Hills, but it never came to fruition.
Yes.
All right, we have some breaking news tonight. And you know what, Candy? I'm like, come on here, and you can go ahead and break the breaking news. All right, we got 2 things that you put up there. Feel free to go out there and mention. And these are pretty good stories. Go ahead, Candy. Come back on, and you have the Brewers and you have FAU. All right, Candy?
So the first thing is the Milwaukee Brewers versus New York Mets. We're supposed to start opening day tomorrow. It has been rescheduled to Friday the 29th due to rain. The other thing is the breaking news. You guys have just been talking about Dusty May, and we all know he left FAU. Florida Atlantic agrees to a 5-year deal with Baylor associate head coach John Jackas, who led them to the national championship back in 2021. So he is a proven coach. So that good hire for them.
Yeah, associate head coach. So there you have it. FAU has a replacement for Dusty May. Breaking news here. Thanks for presenting it. All right. Who we got left here? We got Mr. Ellis, right? Go ahead.
Yep.
So first thing is the Mets are rained out. Nobody really cares. It's a shame he went to the Brewers. For Candy, why baseball in March makes any sense, I don't know. But, hey, I don't control the MLB. Manfred wants to ruin it for everybody, not just us. But, it's amazing when you look at what these schools in March Madness can do with, I think basketball is just such a different sport. You can win with so many different styles. You don't need to have a lot of facilities. You don't need to have a lot of Equipment, you need a basketball and a hoop. You don't need a lot of space. Football, you need pads. You need football, you need a field. So that's why I think it's so different. And there's so many different styles that can win. Where football, it's very physical. If you're quicker, stronger, you're gonna win. I mean, the upsets happen, but 99% of the time in football, the stronger, more physical team's gonna win. Where in basketball you can be quicker, you can play stronger, you can be taller, you can be the shorter team. It's just there's so many different styles, and there's no direct way that this is the way that's always going to win. Where football, it's usually the bigger, the stronger the team. That's it. That's the only way it's going to happen. So that's why I think March Madness is so crazy and special, because you're just throwing teams against each other, teams that would never play, because Kentucky's not scheduled in Oakland. They've probably how many times have they met? This is probably the first time, I would say.
I believe so, yeah, Joe.
I mean, they do have some games early in the season where they'll play teams that, but they're usually regional. It'll be like another Kentucky school so they can get an easy win and get a tune-up. And for the other Kentucky school, it's a payday, because they got to play a bigger school. And, my guys got to go up against whoever the big stars are at Kentucky that year. But, it's a great thing. As far as the money and the disparity, that's the way all sports is. I mean, except where you have salary caps in the NFL and things like that. College sports is always going to be which school has more money. They're going to spend more. It doesn't mean you're better or you're going to get anywhere. You could spend the most money and still lose. I mean, I'm sure if you look through the national championships over the last 10, 15 years, I would say the schools that are in the top 5 in spending probably haven't won one of them.
Okay. All right, George, you have some news of your own here. So to
Yes.
validate J.B. Ellis's point about baseball and Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, JB, another one. And this is a big one. This is Atlanta at Philadelphia, postponed. As Candy mentioned earlier, Milwaukee at New York Mets is postponed. And you still got, I think, the heads in the sand for baseball. When you open up in March in cities like Baltimore, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, I mean, these are cold weather cities, Cincinnati. You're taking a risk. You're taking a chance. So Mother Nature postponed 2 games tomorrow already. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just want to dive into this real quick. We'll probably talk about it in more detail next week. Florida Atlantic goes to Baylor to get associate head coach John Jackas. I don't know much about the hire, so I won't comment on it. But when you grab the associate head coach from Baylor, you're talking about Scott Drew, who's done a masterful job with the Baylor Bears, is what you have. So I'm going to learn more about it. Don't want to get too much in it, but I tell you one thing. I know Brian White well. I've got his cell phone. He's going to be on a future edition of Motor City Mad Mouth show. He doesn't mess around. Brian moves really quickly. We all know he landed Dusty May, so Brian had to really think hard about making this hire. So I'll give Brian the benefit of the doubt on this with John Jacobs hire. Curious to find out more about the coach. Candy, anything you want to add?
Jackas was at Baylor for 7 seasons, including the team's national championship season in 2021, and spent time at Gonzaga as director of operations under Mark Few. Before that, during the 3-year stretch, the Bulldogs went to an Elite 8, 1 year, a Sweet 16, and the next, and then national title game. He also spent 12 seasons on Division I staffs. The teams have posted a combined 316 and 99 record.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
The woman that Jeff DeForest went out there and recommended do voiceovers does it again. We call it our crack statistician, Candy Ebling, the jack of all trades, and master of them all, too. I couldn't give you a big bio on her because it's growing by the second anyway, so whatever. So anyways, that does conclude this edition of the Sports Exchange. What I'm going to do is have everybody, let everybody know they get a hold of it, and Candy will take us home. All right, go ahead, George. How can everybody get a hold of you?
All right, Scott. You can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com, on LinkedIn under my name, and also on Twitter, X. That's where it's Sand G Sports 99. You can follow me at the Motor City Tribune, which is underneath the South Florida Tribune banner, where I write columns. And at the end of each column, there's a link to look up my book, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. And that's a nice book that Scott's in it as well. And we got a great history of Michigan and Detroit sports broadcasting. And if you want to purchase it, it's at Amazon.com. Glad to be part of 108 Stitches, the Sports Exchange, Pundits Pundit, and all these great programs like Fire Up as well. So great show tonight, guys.
Yeah, George also wrote the forward for my book as well.
Oh,
Lessons on the
absolutely.
Microphone.
And I was honored to do so. Thank you, Scott.
Oh, you're welcome. Well deserved. What can I say? You and I go back a long time, and if anybody deserved to do the forward, you did it. All right, Spencer, my prized pupil, who, by the way, will be doing some episodes of Professor and the Pupil going forward. I think that's a good show for Spencer to be on. And, bulldozer marketing. I mean, that's classic. What else do you want me to say? But Spencer is going to be part of the revival of the Professor and the Pupil, and we'll be adding different people as we go. That show will probably air on Thursday nights from time to time, probably after 9 o'clock Eastern time. So glad to have Spencer coming on board in that role. If there's anybody that can do that show with me, and of course, Jeremy Bulrick could be a part of it. We'll see if Jacob Christner. Spencer's definitely the guy that's top caliber all the way. All right, Spence, let everybody know how they get a hold of you.
Yeah, at Spencer Tom said, it's right here if you're looking on the show. If you're listening on podcast networks, it's Spencer spelled regularly with the C. Last name is Tomsett, T as in Tom, OMSETT. That's my handle on Twitter X. Same, you could get a hold of me, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Carrier Pigeon. I'm not that hard to reach, but looking forward to help that, to being a part of this even more, Scott. And whatever, anytime that Scott ever says, "Hey, I want to get you on the show," I'm always happy to help. And same sentiment that George expressed. Great show tonight, gentlemen. As always, it's always good to reconnect with you all.
And Spencer, also in case people are just joining us right now, I want you to let everybody know that what your role is at the University of Alabama.
There's a lot. there's a lot of different things I do. I'm primarily a PhD student. I'm a few weeks out from completing coursework, which will make me a PhD candidate, meaning all I have to do is my comprehensive exams and dissertation. I also am a play-by-play broadcaster freelancing with Crimson Tide Productions, as well as Alabama's Adapted Athletics program. Through my PhD program, I'm teaching classes for undergraduate students. Right now, I'm teaching Intro to Sports Communication, and we just launched a sports announcing course this spring that I'm leading the charge on with teaching this spring, and then the next one in my final semester. So I'm doing a lot. There's a lot of stuff I'm doing on campus, but primarily sports broadcasting whenever they call me up.
I got to ask you a quick question that just came to mind. What are your thoughts about Eli Gold no longer being with the University of Alabama?
I had conversations with my colleagues about this, like right around when it happened. It's certainly not unprecedented for the University of Alabama that when Coach Bear Bryant passed and they chose their new coach, they also let go of their play-by-play broadcaster on the radio through right before they even started. It was even more interesting because we had Eli Gold in the building in January for a Q&A with our members and open it up for anyone at the university to join us. And he had no feeling whatsoever of that this was his last season or any sentiment that he was going to retire. He told us, I remember this distinctly in conversation. A student asked him about what his relationship has been like with Nick Saban. And he talked about it, and he said, I haven't met Kalen DeBoer, but I'm sure we'll get along just fine. So he was anticipating being a part of this season. However, I understand that those who are supervisors or in power, they have a job to do. From what I understand, it was the university decided not to renew his contract and decided not to let him call A-Day. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. Okay. And it's an unfortunate reality of this business. Even if you dedicate almost 4 decades of your life to a university and doing coaches shows and guest appearances and games at home and on the road, not just on the football side, but basketball and softball and other different events, doesn't matter how much you dedicate to one place, you can be let go at any given point. So you have to try and make it to where your employers it would be impossible or way more detrimental to fire you than it would be to keep you on. So I love Eli. He is a treasure. He's been very gracious with his time to me and contacted me and talking to me about various things. And I'm just glad he's got another job with the Nashville Cats. So he's at least still employed in the business. And I forget which college that he's set to do games for as well on a freelance basis. But I'm glad that he's at least employed somewhere. It's just unfortunate that he couldn't go out on his own terms with the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, George Eichhorn and I all know about that drill too much with Ernie Harwell.
Oh gosh,
Well,
yes.
that blow up. I'm not going to get into it too much tonight, but
No.
Ernie was unceremoniously let go. But luckily, Mike Ilitch brought him back because you want to talk about a firestorm and a PR disaster with the Detroit Tigers. All you need to do is Google Ernie Harwell's firing, and then you can see the backlash there. All right, well, we're saving the best for last tonight, and that's JB Ellis. Look at this guy. He's just waiting. He's been
Wait a
patient all
minute.
night. We got to save the best for last. I mean, all you guys are the best, but, with all due
Listen.
respect, he's the only one that did not send a text message, although you didn't either, Spencer. I sent it to you about waiting till I got through the Jeff DeForest. So you know what? JB Ellis, let everybody know how they get a hold of you. I want you to mention the website as well and some of the things that you're doing over at Sideline Sports as well. I know
Website?
the website. Yeah.
Website?
Yeah.
You talking about website?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sideline.
The key to you getting approved at events like the Big East tournament. All right. But hold on,
All
Joe.
right.
We got to get this in here. Norway Brienne. Good time greetings to the panel, especially George from Kingston. More to come. All right. Well, Eichhorn, look at that. All right. Go ahead, Joe. Till the next
All right,
one
so
comes in.
JB_ the program on X. Sideline Sports every Tuesday at 8:30. We're doing a lot of things over there. We actually had Sean Russi, who is an NFL and MLB agent, who started a new show for us tonight. Earlier, it was on at, I believe, 6:30 Eastern. Phenomenal guy going over the sports business. You can learn a lot. If you have questions about contracts and things, you definitely want to tune into that. It'll be on SidelineSportsNet.com and all the Sideline Sports socials. Candy did a phenomenal job building the website. You can see all my game reviews from the Big East tournament and whatever else we cover. Got to cover some more stuff so we can get some more stuff up there, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. Got some articles from George, got some articles from Scott, some from myself and Jacob, who's not here. So there's a lot of different things going on. But that's basically a Tuesday, 8:30 Sideline Sports. Last night we had David Meltzer. You can go watch that on YouTube or any of the socials. Great show and a lot going on.
All right. Well, one of our biggest projects, although we're still waiting word from the NFL, but we'll get more information as time goes on, is a Sideline and South Florida Tribune are definitely looking forward to working together, for the NFL draft, but we're waiting for the NFL to give us complete official verification, so we'll keep you posted there. All right, Candy, I said my piece. You can take us the rest of the way.
You said it best when you said you saved the best for last, and George laughed because he thought it was JB. Hey, I'll take that.
And Candy gets the last laugh.
She is not going to forgive you for that one, Scott. Come on, man.
Well, you know what, Spencer?
Trouble,
I've been in trouble my whole life, so I ain't really worried about it. I'm the only clown on the planet that could tear an ankle up on Christmas Day skiing. And I do want to say this, so I may have it rough at home, but I do want to say on behalf of your family here at the Sports Exchange, for all those individuals that are celebrating the Easter holiday and Good Friday, I want to wish you guys out there a very happy Easter as well as Good Fridays. For those of you that are of the Jewish faith, happy Passover as well. So I may get passed over with a whip with my wife, but I'm not going out there and getting passed over by the rest of you people out there. So happy Easter and happy Passover to all of our Jewish friends and non-Jewish people during this holy holiday. And I'll get it back to Candy Ebling. Otherwise, I may be saying, holy cow, what did I say? He's going to break an ankle. Hey, listen, let me tell you, when people say break a leg to me, I say, no, you really don't want me to do that because I've been known to do stuff like that before. So if you're in the entertainment business out there, don't tell me to break a leg because I'm liable to wind up in the hospital and have to use my insurance card. So give me good luck, but just don't say break a leg. All right, Candy, back to you before I put my foot in my mouth and want to do it. Go ahead, Candy. Mrs. New voiceovers. Look at all this stuff she's going to be adding.
So if you enjoyed this show, and I don't know why you didn't, because we've all been laughing the last couple minutes, especially, you got to subscribe to our channel and listen. If you enjoy podcasts, listen wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that red subscribe button on the South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. Catch out more of our different episodes. Monday nights, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Tuesday nights, Inside the Pigskin. Wednesday nights, a Sports Exchange. And you might sprinkle in a Motor City Mad Mal show. He had another announcer that was on tonight. Great interview. Yes, it's a long one, so you can pause it and take commercial breaks and potty breaks, just whatever you need to do. But it was a great interview. Talked all about South Florida sports and being a broadcaster and how it's changed, just like Scott's book that he wrote, Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. And yes, George Eichhorn wrote the foreword in it. I even got my name in it. Imagine that. Awesome, baby. Awesome, baby. But if you really enjoy our shows and you have ideas, please email us, southfloridatribune.com or at gmail.com. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. I do take pictures, so I have sports photography up there. George has written, Scott's written, JB's even written, and JB's website, not only should you subscribe to our channel, but you should subscribe to all of our panelists and support them because they're supporting us. So we want you to support them too. But most importantly, there's been tragedy in the world lately. We all know what happened in Baltimore. We've seen other things happen around the world. Tell everybody that you love them because you just don't know. None of us are promised tomorrow. It is Easter weekend. It is Passover for those that celebrate those. But just love everybody and tell everybody you love them because you just don't know. We're not promised tomorrow. That's my sign off, Scott.
There you go, Candy. Well done, as usual. So, meanwhile, we want to thank everybody for joining us here on the Sports Exchange tonight. So, on behalf of George Eichhorn, Spencer Thompson, and Joe JB Ellis, my name is Scott Morgan. I thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. We will see you next Wednesday night. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye now.